So I'd like to call to order the regular board meeting of Tuesday, December 4th, 2018. Or call us back to order, I guess. To begin our meeting, we would like to acknowledge the traditional territories and oral practices of the Blackfoot Nations, which includes the Siksika, the Pikaini, and the Kainai. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina and Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome all of our staff and public in attendance at this meeting. Representing our stakeholder groups, I would like to recognize Bob Cocking from ATA Local 38, and Jenica Coppathorne from CBE Staff Association, and Troy Killam from QP Local 40. Representing our Elementary School Principals Association is Rosemary Harms, and from our Principals Association for Adolescent Learners, JF Bélanger. And from our Senior High School Principals Association, we have Lori Cooper and Sherry Goodfellow. Welcome. The first item of business is to approve the agenda for today's meeting. Ms. Minor, do you have any changes that need to be noted?
Madam Chair, there's one change requested to the agenda, that item 8.1.2, the 2018-19 School Enrollment Report, be removed from the consent agenda and be presented following the consent agenda.
Thank you. Could I have a motion that the agenda be approved with the proposed change? Trustee Hare, all those in favor? And that is unanimous. So the first item on our agenda is awards and recognitions, and today we have a Lighthouse Award. Acting Superintendent Smith, would you please introduce this month's Lighthouse recipient?
Thank you, Chair Herdman. I'm pleased today to introduce the December 2018 recipient of the Board of Trustees Lighthouse Award, Catholic Family Services. This award is being given to them in recognition for their ongoing work with the Calgary Board of Education, particularly with the staff and students at Louise Deane Centre. For over 50 years, Catholic Family Service has worked alongside the Calgary Board of Education, supporting students at Louise Deane. Together, we have worked to break down barriers to education for pregnant and parenting teens. Just a couple of examples. Students are now able to access childcare while they're at school. They can obtain bus passes or other transportation assistance, and they receive support to complete high school at a pace that works for them while also raising their family. In line with the Calgary Board of Education's outcome of success for each student every day, this partnership assists students in achieving their goal of completing high school while feeling known, connected, and supported in their learning. Catholic Family Service, along with Alberta Health Services, provides many programs and supports at Louise Deane Centre. Things like individual counseling, professional health care, parenting programs, life skills classes, and as I understand from this morning, some legal support, all at no cost to students. This programming enhances the responsive and personalized learning environment at Louise Deane, creating conditions for success for each student. Beyond high school completion, Catholic Family Service supports these students through employment and career counseling as they enter the workforce or gain employment while pursuing further education. Through their work, Catholic Family Service also helps teachers at Louise Deane respond to the emotional and mental health needs of students so the balance between academics and parenting can be achieved. The work at Louise Deane Centre is a collaborative effort for the success of all students and their families. Approximately 100 students annually are impacted by the work of Catholic Family Service staff. We acknowledge the dedication and commitment of Catholic Family Service in their work at Louise Deane. As Principal Helen Colburn said earlier today, we couldn't do our work without the support of Catholic Family Service. I was going to introduce two students at this point, Kaylee and Sarah, to speak. Unfortunately, Sarah had to be called away, and so I'm going to ask Kaylee to come forward, and I'm also going to ask Principal Helen Colburn to come forward, and she will speak on behalf of Sarah.
Good afternoon, Chair Trina Herdman, Board of Trustees, Superintendent's team, and other honored guests. My name is Kaylee Gates, and I am a student from Louise Deane School in grade 12. I am here to share my experience at Louise Deane and to recognize the remarkable impact Catholic Family Service has had in helping me become the woman I am today. Catholic Family Service has been an incredible support for so many young mothers at Louise Deane. They provide social workers to help support us with life challenges, and my own has been an incredible support over the years. When I am struggling in life, I'm stressed, anxious, or have other worries, she helps me continue to work through them and find strategies to support and calm me. She counsels me too so I can continue to learn to work through stressful issues in my life independently. She works closely with my TA teacher so there is a balance between supporting my academic and life needs, and it is a real partnership that covers multiple needs. I appreciate her so much, and all the social workers are there to provide similar supports, and they are a team of wonderful people. While I am studying, my son is growing and learning in the on-site learning centers that are supported by Catholic Family Service. They support his needs and help support me with parenting as well through advice and conversations. We work together to ensure the best is provided for my son while I study, but he is still close to give me opportunities to be with him. They also oversee a learner bursary program that financially supports many moms here as we would work to complete our studies. Without these supports and programs, I would struggle, as would others, to attend school. Opportunities are also made available through CFS to support our growth as young adults. Youth for Gains is an extracurricular group where we learn about budgeting, financing, and how to save money so we can continue to invest in our academics after Louise Deane. And there are parenting groups where my partner and I go together every Wednesday night to help us grow together as a family and learn more about being parents while we are still learning to be adults. There are supports available for Davy about being a father. Lawyers, accountants, and other professionals are also provided to help with any other needs that arise as well. This support is greatly appreciated as it will give us the skills to stabilize ourselves as we move forward with our education at Louise Deane. Catholic Family Service also works hard to find volunteers and donors to further financially support our needs as young mothers and reduce those stresses in our lives. The biggest one for me was the Christmas hamper, where contributions are made by donors to a family. This made a huge difference for my family last year when we received lots of kitchen tools like a toaster and a microwave, and hundreds of dollars of gift cards and gift certificates. The generosity of Calgarians is wonderful, and it really helps us make our holidays stable and enjoyable. As much as I am motivated to learn and complete my studies, it would not be possible without the supports of Catholic Family Service, and with costs so high and many roadblocks to navigate through as I become an adult, I am very appreciative of both the CBE and Catholic Family Service for everything they provide at Louise Deane. They have given me a chance.
Good afternoon, Chair Trina Herdman, Board of Trustees, Superintendent's team, and honored guest. My name is Helen Colburn, and I am the proud principal of Louise Deane School. Sarah is unable to join us today as she has a very sick child, so I thank you for allowing me to read this on her behalf. Good afternoon, Chair Trina Herdman, Board of Trustees, Superintendent's team, and other honored guests. My name is Sarah Berespaul, and I'm a student at Louise Deane School in grade 12. My relationship with Louise Deane has been a long and rocky road. I was 15 when I was pregnant with my first little one and registered at Louise Deane. But no matter what I tried, I could not get past my personal barriers. I tried many times over the years to get back to school and struggled each time. Louise Deane was always there for me, but at first, I could not make it work. It was not until I got pregnant with my second child that I was able to find the personal strength to try again, and this time, it is my time to shine. I do not think I would be on this road towards graduating if not for the incredible supports of Catholic Family Service. They have helped me get on my feet and transition me from the reserve and living in my grandmother's closet to establishing myself and my family here in Calgary with comfort, stability, and possibility. This released many of the stresses and barriers I had that interfered with attending school. They have also helped me become more independent and helped me find my voice to support myself, to advocate for myself, and to be able to access resources independently and with confidence to continue supporting myself and my children. They are more than simply a support to help me in crisis, but also have worked with me to develop skills to help me move past my stresses, to work through struggles in patient, positive ways, and to continue building my potential as a strong woman. I really would not be in school if it were not for the extra support available through Catholic Family Service. Academics is important, but struggling just to find stability can be overwhelming and derailing for a young student on a good day. Add in a young mom who has struggled her whole life, and you can see that success is a big picture with many layers that need the cooperation of many players and supports and a warm and welcoming community. And then Louise Deane provides just that. I could not even look at my own personal barriers and work on developing strategies to work through my own anxieties and stresses until I had those basic needs in place. And once they were, I was able to really start moving forward. Today, Catholic Family continues to support me as I work through my barriers and I learn to support my family as an independent woman. They have helped me find safe, supportive care for my children, especially with my oldest, who is now in a great daycare and also attends Nitsisapi Learning Center, where she can still connect with her roots. They have also supported my children's father to be the best that he can be as we work through co-parenting and supporting our children while moving our own learning forward as young adults. There are so many other things I could possibly say, but the reality is I am very thankful for Catholic Family Service and the supports that they provide me and the others at Louise Deane. I now see a whole new world of possibilities for my family and my future.
Thank you, Kaylee and Sarah. Your comments speak volumes about how important it is for you to feel known, connected, and supported in your learning, as well as how flexible learning opportunities are critical for you for high school success. You also spoke volumes about the supports that were provided you through Catholic Family Service. I would now like to introduce Mike Thoreau, the proud board chair from Catholic Family Service, who will say a few words on behalf of the program at Louise Deane Center. Once Mike has finished, we will ask him to remain at the podium to receive the award from Chair Trina Herdman.
Thank you very much, Chair Herdman and trustees and the superintendent's team, staff and guests, for giving me the opportunity to say a few words on behalf of Catholic Family Service. It's a great honor to be here, and it's a great honor to receive the Lighthouse Award this year. The partnership that we have with the Calgary Board of Education is very important to us. We appreciate it, we don't take it for granted, and we're very proud of it. The Louise Deane School is quite an amazing place. I was fortunate enough to spend a lot of time there. Before I became a board member at Catholic Family Service, I helped set up and run a volunteer legal clinic. So I spent quite a few years, once a month during the school year, supporting students there, and I was always struck by a couple of things. One, and I don't know if it's quite the same now, but when you walked in, the walls of the school were lined with strollers, which made you realize you were in a slightly different school than the normal school. And the other thing that I was struck by was the incredible dedication of the staff and administrators at CBE, and it really is an incredible place. We're proud to provide the supports that the students at Louise Deane need to thrive. They're a very different population than any other school in the city. They have special needs in order to succeed at school, and we're very proud to provide them with the support they need. I'd like to thank, on behalf of Catholic Family Service, this board for their ongoing support. You have helped us together do incredible things for the students and their children at Louise Deane, and I hope that somebody will be here in another 50 years thanking the board for their ongoing support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Theroux. I used to be the trustee that represented Louise Deane, and when I walked into the school for the first time, what I was struck by is walking into the childcare facility and the baby smell. You just wanted to stand there and soak it all in. And it's thanks to Catholic Family Services and a lot of the support that you do that we are able to offer those services to these young mothers who would not be able to go to school otherwise, that they face so many barriers to their learning. And we always talk about public education as being the key to success in our society. And we talk about each student every day, no exceptions. And it's thanks to partnerships like yours that we are able to support these students in their learning. The needs of students go so far beyond academics and what educators can offer alone. And without the support of Catholic Family Services, there would be too many barriers for the students at Louise Deane to face. So we sincerely thank you for everything that you do. Next on our agenda is recognizing and honoring Legacy Award recipient, Chief Superintendent David Stevenson. The Calgary Board of Education Legacy Award celebrates public education in Calgary and the individuals who have contributed to our communities. Public education is in many ways the foundation of our democratic society, and our communities have been indelibly shaped by CBE graduates over the past century. In every corner of the city, across the country and beyond, our alumni have made a lasting impact. Legacy Award recipients embody the work of the public education system and represent the legacy of the CBE, preparing students for life, work, and inspiring lifelong learning. We want to acknowledge the individuals who continue this work, who use their unique talents to make our world better. These former students are our legacy. Over the years, we have presented this award and its predecessor, the Distinguished Alumni Award, to many impressive people. Recipients have included Olympians, philanthropists, politicians, even an astronaut. Each one of these recipients have acknowledged the critical role that a strong public education system played in laying the foundation for their future success. These are people who are often publicly celebrated for their many achievements and contributions to society, and rightly so. However, today we are presenting this Legacy Award to someone who is not often publicly celebrated, yet who is probably one of the most deserving recipients of this award since its inception, Chief Superintendent David Stevenson. Some 2,500 years ago, the Chinese sage Lao Tzu said, "A leader is best when people barely know he exists, when his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, "We did it ourselves." By this definition, Chief Superintendent Stevenson is a great leader. I can tell you right now that he is uncomfortable taking credit for any success. Not because he doesn't deserve it, but because he doesn't like to be in the spotlight. Instead, he is always shining the light on others and trying to attribute success to them. He is constantly expressing his appreciation for staff, students, and community members in the Calgary Board of Education. Well, today, it is our turn to express our gratitude to you. Chief Superintendent Stevenson began his career with the Calgary Board of Education a long time ago, before I was even born. For over 4 decades, he has dedicated his life to serving the citizens of Calgary by making the Calgary Board of Education a better place for hundreds of thousands of Calgary students. After graduating from James Fowler High School and earning his teaching credentials, he went on to serve as a classroom teacher, psychologist, consultant, specialist, assistant principal and principal, director of special education, area director, and acting superintendent of learning before becoming deputy chief superintendent and then chief superintendent. I want to touch on some highlights from this outstanding career. A long, long time ago, he started in one of the most important and influential positions that exists in our society, that of a classroom teacher. As a beginning teacher at R.T. Alderman School, he actually taught a young lady who would go on to become the Premier of Alberta. However, he soon moved on to what many who know him would consider his true calling, supporting some of society's most vulnerable students. He wanted them to believe in themselves and inspired other staff and community members to work together to help these students achieve their potential. At Emily Follansbee School, he worked with students high on the autism spectrum who were often nonverbal and exhibited a wide range of complex behavioral issues. As an assistant principal at Woods Homes and then as principal of William Roper Hull School, he worked with some of society's most marginalized students. While there, he led a radical shift from simply trying to manage behavior and focusing on the social and emotional wellness of these students who had faced significant trauma, to ensuring that these students were also supported in academic learning. He sincerely believed that no matter how much of a safe and caring environment that the school provided, if they did not teach these students how to read, then the CBE was failing in its duty. We take this for granted now, that each and every student is capable of academic achievement given the right supports. But this was actually a huge shift in thinking in the mid-90s. This caught the attention of senior CBE leadership at the time, who offered him the position of Director of Student Services. Recognizing that teachers could not meet the complexity and variety of needs that students were coming to school with every day, he actively sought out partnerships with corporate, government, and community agencies to support students in schools. Bringing all of these partners together was foundational in the creation of the Student Health Partnership to connect students and their families with a variety of health and social services. This was critical for families who are at risk and who did not possess the skills required to navigate the variety of government agencies that were there to support them. Eventually, this model was expanded across the province and is now known as the Regional Collaborative Service Delivery Model. After serving as area director and then acting superintendent of learning, he was named deputy chief superintendent in 2009. He stepped into the role of chief superintendent on an interim basis in early 2014, before being named chief superintendent later that year. Having been a trustee at that time, I can tell you that it was a unanimous decision of the Board of Trustees, as he was obviously the best choice to lead the system. I remember that trustees interviewed him on a Sunday morning, which also happened to be Mother's Day. It was not the last time that his position would end up taking him away from his family, and we thank them for supporting him throughout the years. As Chief Superintendent, David Stevenson has had to lead our system through many challenging times. Every year, we have asked him to do more with less, and during each of those difficult budget cycles, he has always prioritized students and classrooms first. Under his leadership, the CBE has become more focused on student learning, especially in the areas of literacy, math, Indigenous education, and high school success. He also appreciates the critical role that parents and community members play in education, and led the creation of a new framework for public engagement to involve people in decisions that affect them. Many consider this to be a huge cultural shift within the organization. He is also constantly searching for ways to better support and inspire the 15,000 employees that he is responsible for, as they do the work of educating and caring for society's most precious resource, our children. Finally, he has been an ardent supporter of reconciliation efforts through public education. Through the years, David has worked with our Elders Advisory Council to ensure students who identify as Indigenous have every opportunity to succeed. He has even been honored with a Blackfoot name in recognition of his dedication to working collaboratively with Indigenous communities around Calgary. And his Blackfoot name means person of influence. Despite all of David's accomplishments, it hasn't always been smooth sailing. It is a testament to his character that he is willing to apologize for his mistakes and do his very best to correct them. He is a strong believer in democracy and has always respected and supported board decisions, even when he may not have agreed with them, which probably happened more often than he would have liked. I wish that I was able to do a better job of describing Chief Superintendent Stevenson's incredible dedication to public education and to meeting the needs of students, especially our most vulnerable. I know that he has had many sleepless nights worrying about students, especially when they go on international trips that he has personally signed off on. I know that he has spent countless hours agonizing over decisions that could impact thousands of students and families and pondering how we could do better. I know that innumerable staff have expressed how he makes them want to do and be better for students. I know that he truly believes that public education is a keystone of our democratic society and that it is imperative that we do our very best every day to support each and every student. I also know that when we fail, and in such a large system, there are always failures, that those failures break his heart. However, I hope that he will not dwell on those and that he will recognize that he is leaving the Calgary Board of Education a better place. He has served our system diligently and faithfully and will be deeply missed by many. Ralph Waldo Emerson once wrote, "To laugh often and much, to win the respect of the intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the beauty in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know that one life has breathed easier because you lived here. This is to have succeeded." Chief Superintendent Stevenson, David, there are many who have breathed easier because of your work here. To recognize your achievement today, we are presenting you with this Legacy Award. Each Legacy Award is unique. David's includes artwork by fellow James Fowler High School student Sarah Law. She is currently an advanced drawing 35 student, and she created the drawing featured on this award just for you. And you'll see it and know that it is unique and just for you. Also, in keeping with Chief Superintendent Stevenson's commitment to supporting students achieve their potential, in honor of his more than 40 years of service, a scholarship fund has been set up in his name for Indigenous students through Education Matters. We hope that people will consider making a donation to this fund to recognize the impact that he has made on students and staff throughout his career. Chief Stevenson, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, almost 15,000 employees, and more than 123,000 students, I thank you for your service. I'd now like you to offer a few words before we have a photo.
Chair Herdman and trustees, I truly can think of no greater way to end my time with the Calgary Board of Education and public education than with this award. And Chair Herdman, your comments are so eloquent and have touched me in a way that I didn't really think was possible. So thank you for that. Chair Herdman has gone over my career in significant detail and takes away about 5 pages of what I've written down. But it's easy for me to stand here because about 3 years ago, at one of our high school graduations, a keynote speaker talked to our students about living a life of gratitude. And that speech had a very powerful influence on me. Being a glass half empty kind of fellow, it made me make a commitment to myself that I wanted to exemplify that life of gratitude. And so today will be about gratitude. Gratitude starts for me today with my family. There are so many family members here today, and many spread throughout Canada and the United States that couldn't be here, but have sent the messages through social media, as you would expect. But my mother is here today, my mother-in-law, my wife, my daughter, many, many nieces and nephews, some who had to go back to work, because that's the Calgary Board of Education, sisters-in-law, and partners who have meant more to me than even public education has. And I want to talk about my mother and my mother-in-law, and at least a little bit of their legacy, because they are much, much more than mothers, but to me they are mothers. Both sets of my parents and my wife's parents were part of public education. Some were born in Canada, but some immigrated to Canada. And all of them passed on their belief in public education to their children. My mother's children, 5 of us, at one time 4 of us were teachers, 1 in Rocky View and 3 in the Calgary Board of Education. We spent our lives being told that public education was our way forward. It was what would bring us a better life, and that would also allow us to contribute back to our society, a society and a type of government post-World War II that meant more to them than they could ever express. For my mother-in-law, her family came from Manitoba, but once they were in Calgary, even some of those folks became part of the Calgary Board of Education. My wife for about 15 minutes before she decided to move on. And right now, my daughter is part of the Calgary Board of Education. I take great pride in that I'm the only director in the Calgary Board of Education to ever have a baby shower. It came rather late in life for me, but it's been a joy every day. My mother's children, my mother-in-law's children, all went on to be successful people in Calgary and throughout the world. They were teachers, they were lawyers, they were people in the oil industry. My brother is still in the oil industry, the oil and gas industry. And they all had children. Well, not all of them, but most of them had children. And those grandchildren, my mother's grandchildren, my mother-in-law's grandchildren, were all, for the most part of the Calgary Board of Education. And they all went on to become successful citizens of Calgary and Alberta and throughout the world. They became nurses, they became teachers, they became entrepreneurs. They too work in the oil and gas industry. And they have had children. So my mother and my mother-in-law's great-grandchildren are now part of the Calgary Board of Education. And I have every belief that they will go on to be successful citizens. It has been an extremely wonderful thing for me, a great honor, to work in something that has true meaning to me, that has allowed me to feel that I have contributed, that I have somehow touched lives and made lives better, and ultimately made our society better. And I don't say that with any degree of arrogance. I say that with great gratitude. You have heard today from a partner of the Calgary Board of Education and from a student and their partner and a second student about what public education and opportunity has meant to them. Chair Herdman, you brought many highlights of my career forward, and I would agree with every single one of them. There has been opportunity in our system for every student who enters our doors. That's a foundational belief of public education and a foundational belief for me. And I believe it's a belief for Trustee Hare. He expressed that in our last board meeting. We offer a variety of programming from Louise Deane to Discovering Choices Outreach to Hull and Woods and Christine Meikle. And some of those programs have looked after my family and my family members, and have provided them with the opportunity to ensure that they could graduate and that they could move on to a successful life in our society. Our partnerships have been incredible. And I'm going to just mention one circumstance. I know it's been mentioned lots and everybody is aware of it. But we received almost overnight 500 refugees from Syria. And I want everybody to know we receive refugees on a regular basis. And because we have systems in place to take care of those individuals, receiving 500 of them all at once was not a big deal for us. It may seem like it at the moment, and for Jeannie and some of her staff, talk about sleepless nights. But we had mobilized resources very, very quickly. And those students were almost immediately integrated into our school system and integrated into our city because of our partnerships. And a year later, it was just like normal for us as a system as we absorbed those students. And that's what public education is about. We had the staff, and we were able to hire new staff through our HR department and put them in place almost immediately and support them. We had money through our finance department, because Brad always has money somewhere. You just have to know the tricks. And we had learning services people that came to the support of our new teachers, the support of those new students. And so it's just a small example of what an organization like the Calgary Board of Education can achieve. There was a period in our time, in our history, where we were losing students out of our doors to other systems. And the solution was to offer alternative programs. And although that wasn't mentioned by Chair Herdman, I want to mention it. Being open to alternative programs and supporting alternative programs, I believe, got me promoted. That was a good thing. But it also brought thousands of students back into public education. And I'm very proud and honored that I was part of that work and was able to do that, and have always felt a very strong support for choices within our system. Whether those were choices around complex learners, around refugees, around how parents believe their students should be educated, choice within our system was a key value that I carried. It is with some sadness, but some joy, that I leave the Calgary Board of Education. I believe it's the right time for me to leave, and I believe it's the right time to bring in a new chief superintendent. Our superintendent's team and our trustees have worked long hours to come up with a transition plan to support the new chief superintendent. And my final request to everybody in our district, including our families and parents, is to offer that individual all the support that they can. I know our principals, our superintendents, our staff throughout our district have been asked to do that, and I know that they will do that. There is nothing more important than the work of public education and the Calgary Board of Education. It needs to carry on, and I believe it will carry on. And I will be there as a parent now. Like other parents, trying to scam my way into a high school, trying to do what's best for my child, and only have to worry about that one child. And that's not true, because I have lots of little nephews and nieces coming along. One of them just a few months old in the audience, that I'm confident will come into the Calgary Board of Education. I wish that I could speak to each superintendent. There are no finer group of people in our system than the superintendents of the Calgary Board of Education today. Each of them has brought in new initiatives. Each of them have shown leadership to change our district, to move it forward. I see that in our principals, and I see that in our teachers, and I see that in our staff. We have many representatives of our different staff groups here today. Our ATA, our staff association, our trades, our CUPE. One of the things I'm most proud about is the relationships that we as an administration have developed with those unions, associations. There have been lots of things to resolve, and there will always be things to resolve. But we have worked in a constructive, positive way. It's hard for me to stop because I want to thank so many different people. Our principals here today, we have devoted significant time and resource to supporting them because we recognize their power, their strength in changing how we educate our students. I used to think that I was very lucky because I was always falling into these new programs, and Chair Herdman mentioned some of them. Programs that were unique, were new, were experimental. And one day I realized it wasn't that I was lucky. It's that those things were happening everywhere in our system every day. And those opportunities existed for all of the staff in the Calgary Board of Education. It's been a privilege, it's been an honor, it's been humbling, and it's been really stressful. I look forward, and my family look forward, to a Sunday night where I'm not obsessing over questions the trustees have sent or what the week will bring. I wish you all the very, very best. You are engaged in the most noble of professions. You are about the future of us as a society, and you look after our most prized possession, our young people. Thank you for the honors. Thank you for all the kind wishes I've received over the last several months. I literally have had hundreds and hundreds of positive comments. People approach me in the street. I was up in Red Deer, and a teacher and a staff from upstairs, each separately, approached me and thanked me. It has been a privilege, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much, folks.
We're just going to take a 5-minute recess to allow everyone who needs to go to get back to work. If everyone could make their way back to their seats, we'll start again in a minute. So I'd like to call us back to order. In this much emptier room. Okay, our next business item deals with results focus. And today we have a school presentation from Capitol Hill School. Director Darlene Unruh, would you please introduce the report?
Good afternoon, Chair Herdman, trustees, superintendents, and guests. I'm truly humbled to be able to present Capitol Hill School to Chief Superintendent Stevenson and to everyone here today. Our newest Legacy Award winner, to celebrate learning this afternoon. Benita Dalton, principal of Capitol Hill School, and her staff and students are here to share their work regarding results 2, specific to language arts, academic success. Academic success is defined as each student will be literate and numerate, able to integrate and apply knowledge, skills, attributes, and competencies acquired across all academic disciplines. Benita, her staff, and students are here today to share their work on meeting academic success in the English Language Arts core. Capitol Hill School is a unique and dynamic learning environment with a regular program, kindergarten to grade 6, which serves Capitol Hill, Banff Trail, Collingwood, and Charleswood communities. Capitol Hill also houses a task specialized system program, which serves students from a variety of communities. The staff at Capitol Hill have created a learning community that celebrates diversity. More specifically, in the area of language arts, Capitol Hill School interprets literate to mean the ability to acquire, create, connect, and communicate meaning through language, images, and in written text. During my visits to Capitol Hill School, I've had the opportunity to engage in conversations with teachers, hear student stories, and observe how personalized learning is woven well through well-developed tasks. I approached Benita and her learning team to present today, as I've been truly impressed with the continuous improvement in student learning and achievement. The staff's commitment to ongoing professional learning in English language arts and defined connections between their day-to-day work, which is aligned with their school development plan, our 3-year plan, and our CBE literacy strategy. Professional learning through learning leader sessions, system principal meetings, and area meetings is an excellent example of the importance of supporting the development of teachers' collective efficacy. I hope you find this presentation as informative as I have. They are excited to be here today to share their work in English Language Arts. I'd like to welcome Benita Dalton, Principal of Capitol Hill School, to share their work with you. Benita?
Good afternoon, Chair Herdman, trustees, superintendents, team, and guests. It is my pleasure to present the work of Capitol Hill School and to share with you our journey regarding the growth in academic success, particularly in reading and writing as a part of the English Language Arts curriculum. During our presentation, you will hear the perspectives of students, teachers, and parents. To start, Monica Demuth, my partner and assistant principal, will share how our work has progressed in alignment with the CBE's 3-year educational plan.
Good afternoon. As we worked collectively early last school year and analyzed the school data to determine our students' areas of strengths and needs, it was apparent their reading was an area of needed focus across all grades. Over the past 2 years, there had been a decline in our achievement on the reading and writing components of the English Language Arts Provincial Achievement Tests. We saw this as an area of concern throughout the grades. We worked at various data sources and evidence from report cards to student work to determine gaps with each grade level. Through our work with system initiatives such as learning leader sessions and a focus on instructional leadership, Benita and I have often drawn upon the education research of John Hattie, who speaks of the importance of knowing thy impact. As a staff, we needed to examine how our teaching practices impact student learning. In addition, we needed to reflect on our own professional learning needs in order to deeply engage in this work and to better serve our students. We used Helen Timperley's teacher inquiry model in order to identify our professional needs. This gave us the means of developing alignment in how teachers were taking up the work in the teaching of reading in explicit and impactful ways and in order to make changes to our students' achievement. We engaged with system literacy specialists and assessment teams who provided support in creating focused strategies, and they helped frame our collective work. Our CBE literacy strategy provided clarity and direction for our students and teachers. We examined the literacy strategy and worked collaboratively to explore task designs that elicited evidence of student understanding of reading. We established instructional actions such as designing responsive, explicit instruction and assessment tools to help us understand each of our students in a relevant and timely manner. Our instructional actions also included common task design across the grades, incorporating understandings from learning leader sessions regarding established learning intentions and formative assessment practices. Teachers involve students in a variety of self, peer, and teacher assessment practices about their reading. Each grade team decided on which high-impact strategies they were going to intentionally work on to support moving students from being passive readers to meaning makers. Benita will now share how these strategies lived in our learning teams, classrooms, and benefited our students.
In order to lead our learning community and provide instructional leadership, we adopted Simon Breakspeare's idea of learning sprints to address school improvement. As a staff, We were strategic in creating a framework that allowed for intentional, explicit instruction, taking on many forms through the development of our learning sprints. As a leadership team, we identified a problem of practice and proceeded to provide professional learning for our teachers who transferred their new learning into their daily instructional practices. Each grade group determined their focus from the larger context of our school development plan achievement goal. Students will increase their reading comprehension of narrative and poetic texts. Teachers identified short-term learning targets based on the English language arts curriculum and designed and modeled tasks that incorporated various reading skills, which included decoding, reading fluency, and comprehension. This intentional work provided alignment amongst teachers. In classrooms, we used the gradual release model of responsibility. I do, we do, you do, with multiple opportunities for guided practice and feedback. Our younger students experienced this through a variety of reading practices and structures. In the simplest terms, teachers model, students practice with teacher guidance, and we move students through individual programming to mastery. Particularly daily guided reading sessions where students were grouped according to their reading needs. This strategy was helpful because it made the reading process visible to both students and teachers. Within the guided reading sessions, teachers were able to model and to provide immediate feedback to the students in real time. We will now share a student's perspective on how he used high-impact strategies to support his literacy development.
I sort of listen for the details, and well, sometimes you can just pass over things, but once you understand them better, you can don't have to pass over it, you can understand what it means. Annotating is sort of marking up the piece so you can understand what the writing is trying to convey, and it makes it so the reader has a better understanding of the piece. It helped me to break down things when I was reading to understand better what they were trying to tell us. But then I could also use that and do the opposite when I was doing my own writing, so I could take the annotating and I can build it up into something stronger, more effective to people to hear or read and make it more enticing. Well, I think having rubrics made it so I didn't have to ask what I needed, but I could have my personal marking system, so I would think, well, I could probably make this part stronger, but I like this part. I think it matches up with what the rubric needs me to do.
Hello, my name is Antonia Kusri, and I'm a grade 5-6 teacher. Our journey over the past few years has emphasized to me the importance of being a reflective practitioner. I am constantly working to improve through collaboration and personal reflection. Last year's literacy sprint was an excellent opportunity to collaborate with colleagues in order to best meet the needs of our students. I developed a clearer understanding of the literacy needs of each of our students with pre-assessment designed by our teaching team. After each lesson, my partner teacher and I shared our observations and adjusted our teaching to best support our students. In the past, I had limited opportunity to collaborate deeply with my colleagues. My teaching reflections usually lived in my head. Learning to collaborate daily with other professionals has been a learning curve in itself. I believe a good teacher is not simply a teacher with advanced skills and knowledge, but seeks out feedback and is willing to learn from others. I was open to new ideas, and I feel both my teaching practice and my students learning benefited. I developed confidence in using new strategies through discussion in our team meetings and professional learning communities. New reading strategies supported the intentional design of learning for my students. In addition, I gained a better understanding of assessment by creating common rubrics and assessments with my colleagues. Together, we were able to develop clarity in our learning intentions as a grade 5-6 learning community. It is important to have structured time, such as early dismissal days, to dialogue and have opportunities for professional interactions. I truly felt it was a year of tremendous professional growth, resulting in the development of my understanding of task design and assessment, which is transferable to all areas of my teaching. Students developed an intense focus and perseverance with reading tasks. Students had opportunities for open conversations and providing instant feedback to each other in relation to the criteria of their tasks. A benefit of this work was the increase in students' ability to comprehend complex texts and the transference that naturally occurred in their own writing. Students were able to write with intensity and expressively, using figurative language that was deeply connected to personal real-life experiences. Being selective about their word choice led to clear and concise messaging about their topics. The next video clip provides a parent perspective, and after, Siobhan Morrison, a grade 6 student, will share her literacy experience.
So I think he's a very good reader and very good interpreter of his reading. He's very good, picks up things quickly and understands quickly. I would say that my observation of his writing and his self-expression is something that needed work. And I think that this year, like his grade 6 year especially, working with Mrs. Moore, I think that has really helped him grow in his confidence in writing. They used was a rubric, and Noah is a person who really likes to know exactly, what is expected of him, and that really helped him out. And I think the other thing that really helped him out in that regard as well was that she also gave him like different ideas. The learning objectives was that Mrs. Moore really spelled things out quite nicely in those rubrics, and that helped, my observation is that it helped Noah navigate what the expectations were, and also was a basis for feedback. I would say that Noah is generally like a fairly engaged student. I think where he disengages is when it's not challenging or when it's not interesting. I feel like that poetry for him is a little bit outside the box. I think this was a stretch for him. I would say having to be sparse with your words and being very careful with your words in poetry helps him to articulate and choose his words carefully. Over his entire life, I think he's kind of a little bit more hesitant about new experiences. Noah likes to be good at things, and he is a very good reader. He is a very good student. He excels in all subjects. But he struggled with some aspects of language arts. Where I got my information about the reading programs was from being in the parent council, and Benita did a great job of bringing the concerns and bringing the strategies and talking about how the work with the teachers would happen in the school, and gave language. As a parent, it gave me confidence that this reading, this area of reading was something that was being addressed very specifically and in a very articulate, in a strategic way, I would say.
When reading poetry, I was able to learn from authors about their perspectives of the world. I was able to respond critically to their writing. When reading a strong piece of writing, I respect it for its uniqueness. As a class, when we responded to a poem, we had the opportunity to share our opinions. It was a chance to hear other students' voices and respond to different opinions. Now I see reading in a different way. Before, when I read, I would read it and I would be done. But now I think about it over time and will reference it in conversation with others. When reading, I search for deeper meaning in text. I listen for new words and things that are out of the ordinary. In class, we read a wide range of poetry that showed us how poetry can be organized and how this organization of text has purpose and creates meaning for the reader. As we wrote our poetry, our uniqueness was reflected in our word choice and expression to create meaning for the reader. For one of my poems, I chose to write about racism. I chose this topic because I believe that others don't believe in equality, and I felt I could provide a new perspective on this topic. I would like to share my poem with you. Paint over your personality. Remember grade 3 when we colored bubble letters? The color didn't matter. It shouldn't. Or when you put on a coat. It doesn't matter what color it is. It doesn't. So when we put on the coat, we color skin. No matter what the color of the coat is, the person underneath are all the same. Our skin is just paint over our personality, just a small coat we wear and can't take off, and definitely shouldn't make a difference how you're treated. Racism creates icebergs in many of our lives, and we need to become the sun to burn them down. Because some people are going to clash into them, and others are going to try to avoid them, and others will jump into the sea we call life, trying to avoid hate which will bite. We can never go back to when this all started, but we can start fresh, right now. We would like to thank you for the opportunity to share our learning experiences with you. Thank you.
So thank you very much. We really appreciate the presentation you gave us today. Director Unruh, thank you for bringing forward our Capitol Hill School to help share some of that information with us. Principal Dalton and Assistant Principal DeMuth, Ms. Corsori, and Siobhan, I really admire your poem. I can't quite see you behind the... but I admire you sharing your poem with us today. It's great for us to be able to see the work that students are actually doing. And I just wrote down a few of the words that certainly struck me as you were talking today, beginning with using the PAT's data to inform your practice. It's very meaningful for me. But things like words like impact, intentional, explicit instruction, clarity, guided practice, and common task design and pre-assessment. And I think this all speaks to the level of intentionality that you've undertaken this work. The commitment to bringing forward as a team, I think, is very striking and significant. So I really enjoyed this today, and thank you again for spending the time. We appreciate it's a short presentation, but it takes a lot of time to pull it together, and we would like to acknowledge the work that you did, and thank you for coming here today.
So next on our agenda is the results to report card information report, Part 1, Language Arts, Languages, and Social Studies. Chief Superintendent Stevenson, would you please introduce the report?
Chair Herdman and trustees, today we bring the board the first of 2 report card information reports related to the subject areas identified within Results 2, Academic Success. This report and the report in January are in response to the board's request for more information and additional context in understanding the overall information provided in the Results 2 monitoring report, which will be coming before you in February. The information the board requested is detailed and lengthy and is intended to support the board's understanding of achievement within each discipline. As you know, the Board of Trustees has approved the indicators for determining success with each of the results. For results 2, academic success, there are 12 approved indicators. Today's report is additional information related to one of the 12 indicators, specifically regarding learning expectations within each discipline as measured by report cards. The focus of this report will be on students meeting learning expectations within the disciplines of language arts, languages, and social studies, and providing evidence of student success last year and help to define next steps in student learning as we work together to advance the teaching and learning agenda within the Calgary Board of Education. I will ask Acting Superintendent Smith to introduce the report.
Thank you. Chair Herdman and trustees, the data in this report supports the results 2 monitoring indicator, percentage of students meeting learning expectations within each discipline as measured by student report cards. These data are generated by teacher evaluations of students' understanding of the learning outcomes in the program of study. These evaluations are conducted across time through multiple learning tasks and assessment activities. Report card data sets are expansive and inclusive, representing the learning of more than 123,000 students. These data allow us to examine and understand the learning of CBE students across a broad range of assessment. In kindergarten to grade 9, as a result of a common report card, we have opportunities to work with student learning across grades and within individual subject areas. In the report, you will find the results as requested by trustees and organized into 3 categories: overall results for K-12 courses, overall results by STEM for K-9 courses, and overall results by STEM and grade for K-9 resources. During the 2017-18-19 year, area directors introduced the work of calibration to schools and their staff. The intention of calibration is to increase the consistency of assessment within schools and across schools. It's the work that teachers do together to ensure that student tasks are assessed using the same criteria and expectations. This work was taken up last year in terms of our report card indicator scale. Many staffs explored and collaborated around what our 1, 2, 3, and 4 indicators represented and came to a deeper understanding of the proficiency levels of our report card in reference to the actual student work. As with any in-depth professional learning, when a spotlight focuses on an area, we can expect to see change. In some cases, we see adjusted assessment results as teachers continue to become more comfortable with the indicator scale through this calibration work, professional development in relation to reporting to parents on report cards. As measured by report cards, Calgary Board of Education students' achievement in language arts, languages, and social studies are historically areas in which CBE students demonstrate strong learning. This is evident across the range of courses, grades, and learning outcomes within each subject area. The data from 2017-18 confirms once again that learning is taking place in each classroom, in each grade, and in each CBE school every day. Of note are the following results. In English language arts, grades 2 to 9, and on the -1 courses, over 90% of students met with success. In French language arts, K to 12, over 91% of students met with success. In additional language arts, over 94% of students K to 8 met with success in our Chinese Mandarin bilingual program. Over 96% of students in kindergarten to grade 6 met with success in the German bilingual program, and over 92% of students grades 2 to 12 met with success in Spanish language arts. In language and culture and French as a second language courses, over 85% of students met with success. In social studies, K-9 and in -1 courses, over 90% of students met with success. At this point in time, we'd be happy to answer any questions related to this that you have.
Thank you. Trustees, any questions on the report? Trustee Adams?
Hi, thank you very much. I'm just looking at page, sorry, I have to scroll down, 4-5, and I just can't remember, so I'm hoping you can remind me. On the chart, we have we start in the overalls, and we start in 2011 to 2012, and we go all the way up to 2017, 2018. Can you just remind me, when did we switch from the 1 to 5 report card markers to the 1 to 4? Like, was it 2011 to, and in that case, how did we compensate for that when we switched them over? How does that affect how did we work that in? Sorry, there's a better way to ask that question, I just can't think of it at the moment.
Chair Herdman, through to Trustee Adams. So it was 4 years ago that we switched to the K-9 report card, common report card. And what we did at the time was we took a look at the student success rates based on the old system. We worked with the new system and tried a number of different formulae until we got something that matched the old system so that there was consistency.
Trustee Davis?
So you mentioned in your introduction of the report, I think you used the word calibration. So what does that look like in terms of resources that exist in the schools? And I guess what I'm thinking about is if we have a group, I think as we heard with the Capitol Hill presentation, is that as a team they'll come together and do some work together, and I'm wondering, does that end up with exemplars that we're using, particular lesson plans? Like, what is the hard outcome of some of that could be used as a resource?
What you're asking, and if what I say isn't what you're asking, then try me again. Calibration does result in some rubrics and some exemplars for teachers to be able to share with students and with parents and with other staff members around what constitutes a 1, what constitutes a 2, a 3, and a 4. And so they would work together to review a number of pieces of student work to say, well, I would have given this one a 1, I'd have given it a 2, and then they have conversation until they can all agree upon what each of those numbers, what each of those values would be given on a piece of work. Does that answer your question?
Chair Herdman, through to Trustee Davis. And if I could just add, we do have some benchmarked work for teachers to look at on the literacy strategy page around, for example, literacy. So we have some reading examples, writing examples that are benchmarked for teachers so that they can refer to that as to what a 2, 3, 4 would look like on the various outcomes in the program of study.
Trustee Adams?
Just kind of following along that, I'm just curious, and I know this isn't something that we asked for, but I'm curious if this is something that we track. Do we ever track how kids, because right now we're looking at anyone that gets a 2 or above, sorry, I'm looking of course specifically at the K-9. Do we ever track how they move through that system? Like, do we ever do the averages, like say maybe one year we had a whole bunch of 4s and a bunch of 3s, or do we ever see how they move through the grid at all that way?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Adams, yes, each school would look at that very closely. So we would compare report card information or whatever information we were looking at for our grade 1s this year and look at where our grade 2s are at this year, the next year, so that we can see how students are moving through the grades around those indicators.
Kind of in line with Trustee Adams' question, I'm just wondering how we analyze the report card data at a system or area level. in order to make any conclusions.
Chair Herdman, so we do a number of things. So we start by taking a look at the data to see, does anything pop? Is there anything particularly high? Is there anything particularly low? So that we can dig into that a bit. We also apply the chi-square, just like the Alberta Ed data that we get. We take a look at that to see if there's any areas where we have improved or decreased in a significant way. What matters is over time, and so we don't panic when we see a drop in 1 year. We don't rejoice when we see an increase in 1 year. We look at things over time. So that's, in a nutshell, what we do. And then we dig.
If I could just add to that, Chair Herdman, that's what would happen at the system level. Really, the analysis, the heavy lifting is done at the school level, where they look at each question on a PAT or each indicator STEM, and they would look at their data to dig in and figure out where students were at and maybe where in the program of studies people needed to spend a little bit more time.
Thank you. You just referred to doing the chi-square test. I'm just wondering, is that on every STEM? Is it on every grade level? When do you apply that statistical calculation?
Chair Herdman, we do it across the board on everything. This year we were able to hire a statistician part-time. So she's been able to do that this year on everything that we have. Every STEM, every grade, every bit of data that's in there, she's been doing that for us.
Trustee Davis?
So we go back to the calibration. I really like your word. Is part of that how many discrete assessments we would expect a teacher to be using in order to establish a grade at the end of the year?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis, we wouldn't ask teachers for a specific number. What we ask teachers for is a body of evidence that will tell the student and the parent what the student is able to do, what the student is able to do as a result of those assessments.
Trustee Davis? Okay. We'll just take turns. Specifically when we're looking at the findings section of the Mandarin, German, and Spanish results, and it speaks to trends of student growth, I'm just wondering what was meant by student growth.
Chair Herdman, what we mean there is consistently high achievement over time.
Trustee Davis?
So when we go back to this body of work and this assessment, I know that a conversation that I continue to hear is how is it transparent to parents what grade level work is? And so I'm not aware, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't publish anywhere on our general website exemplars for reading and writing at a system level. And I'm wondering if there is a requirement to do that at a school by school level so the parents can access it through their individual school.
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis. So with regard to the exemplars, I would say most schools do that. Is it a requirement? No, it's good practice. What our schools do and what parents have available to them are certainly the program of studies, and Information Alberta Education would afford any parent in any system with regard to the outcomes their kids should be attending to in those particular program of studies.
Trustee Adams?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the French language arts. Just looking at the overall on page 4-9, I'm just curious, is that just going to be French immersion students, or does it also include French late immersion students? And do we see, what's kind of the transition for that, for the late immersion who would then come into French language arts, and how does that?
Chair Herdman, through to Trustee Adams, that's all students who take French immersion, including late French immersion, and late French immersion starts in grade 7.
Trustee Davis?
So just a question about Spanish. It's my understanding that we are no longer using the Spanish performance tasks as part of our, as part of the work the schools are doing. So can you just tell me how we are ensuring that there is consistent language acquisition across the different schools? Or if something's replaced it?
So Chair Herdman through to Trustee Davis. You're right, we stopped using the Spanish performance exams about 4 years ago. And so schools are now currently working with some staff from Learning to create common assessments so that they have a tool that they can use across the schools for some consistency. The other piece of that is at the end of a student's time in Spanish bilingual, they can write, and I don't have all of the right letters for it, but it's the DELE exam, which gives a Spanish proficiency then at the different levels moving forward, which would help inform what we do around that fluency and that proficiency.
Trustee Davis?
And I know that, we have DELF in French and the DELE in Spanish. Are we currently tracking how many students are writing them and what their level of proficiency is?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis. Yes, we do track that. I don't have that information with me here today. That's information that the board would like to have. I certainly can provide it.
Trustee Davis?
Just as a follow-up, is there an equivalent to DELE for the Mandarin and German programs that we use, or is that just internally?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis, no, there isn't at this time, so that's just an internal.
With regards to social studies report card results, usually we see a large difference between the achievement on report card results and the PAT results when it comes to social studies. So I'm just wondering if you could comment on that gap.
Chair Herdman, so the gap's been pretty consistent over time, but I would caution the PAT is a population measure, and report cards are an individual measure, and they're not directly comparable. And so we would always caution that comparison. La, 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 la.
Just following up, when we had the presentation back in September, the board development session, and we talked about curricular outcomes that are on different subject areas. I don't remember if we specifically talked about social studies, but do you know approximately how many curricular outcomes? I would think that social studies would be harder to do on a multiple choice test.
Chair Herdman, yes, it is much more challenging to do through multiple choice. So on the Social Studies 9 June 2018 PAT, only 43% of the specific outcomes were assessed.
Trustee Davis?
So when we look at page 4-6, at the middle chart, if we were to follow a grade 10 student starting in 2014-15 in 10-1, we go from 96.1%, or if we're to follow the cohort rather, not a student, we go from 96.1% if you look at the 20-1 for the next year, it's 97.3%. And then if you go to the third year, under 30-1, it drops to 92.4. And we see the same kind of pattern for the next year as well. And I'm just wondering, when you look at that data, how you would view that drop, or what possible explanations would you be looking at as you're looking at that?
Chair Herdman, through to Trustee Davis. Part of the challenge is that students can take multiple paths. So while it seems logical that students would do 10-1, 10-1, 21, 30-1, not all students do that. And so you might have a student who starts in 10-2, who the next year might go into 20-1, or 20-2, and then the next year might go into 30-1. Or progress in different ways. So it's a challenge to know, to follow a particular cohort of students to assume that that's pattern is happening. So we attempt to look at the data and try and figure out where students are going. We're hoping with the new SIS that we'll be able to track cohorts of students and better decide that.
Trustees, any further questions? Trustee Davis?
I'm just looking at page 4-9, at the chart at the top. When we look for grades 1, 2, and 3 at the fourth and the last STEM, reads to explore, construct, and extend understanding, and rights to develop, organize, and express information and ideas, those two STEMs are quite a bit lower than the other grades. And, while I appreciate they can do a lot less at that age, I assume, the assessments we're using reflect that. So those two things are obviously pretty foundational by the end of grade 3. And I'm just wondering how we should be looking at that data and whether that's consistent with previous years, which I appreciate may not be a fair question. You may not have that data in front of you, but if you just provide some context to those results, I'd appreciate it.
Chair Herdman, through to Trustee Davis. With respect to the Reads to Explore, when we did our analysis for grades 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 9, those have improved significantly over the previous 3-year average. So while they are lower, we are seeing the targeted improvement that are in SDPs around Reads to Explore. We're seeing that. I don't have the right data with me, because I've just, we're all about Reads to Explore. But so I can't say whether those were significantly improved as well.
Trustee Adams?
On 4-18, just looking at the Spanish language arts overall, I noticed when you follow a cohort from 2014, the kindergarten, to grade 1, and in every year there seems to be a drop significantly in 2016 to 2017. The kindergarten was 98.5, and then when that group the next year moved into grade 1, it was 88.5. Is that just kind of a normal transition phase when we go from kindergarten and into grade 1?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Adams. It could be that the cohort of students changed. Some students entered grade 1 that weren't in kindergarten with the students, because we do have the 2 grade levels where we can have students enter. So that could be a factor. Another thing that could be a factor is some of the work that the school did around the calibration over that 2017-18 school year. So there are a number of factors that could play into that. I don't know which one of those things necessarily had that effect.
Trustee Davis?
Just going back to those Spanish performance tasks, it's my understanding those were teacher-developed resources, and we, in the Spanish program in particular, we have a large number of teachers coming in from other countries who I understand have quite different approaches to how curriculum is taught. So I'm just wondering why we would have discontinued using those when it sounds like we don't quite have new ones developed.
Chair Herdman through to Trustee Davis. My understanding is that there were a couple of reasons that they were dropped. One was that the province used to require that to be done. They no longer require the Spanish performance tasks to be completed. And the people who were using them found that they weren't perfect like any other tool, and so they were working to develop a tool that they were more comfortable with in the school.
And just a follow-up question, do you have an ETA as to when that tool will be developed and in use?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis, I'm sorry I don't have an ETA. I know that they are working on it diligently right now. They want to have that information or that tool to be able to use. I can report back on where they're at with that at some point if that's the will of the board.
Trustees, any further questions? Okay, again, this report was just for information, so we will now move on to the next item of business, which is operational expectations and the annual monitoring of OE8, communicating and engaging with the public. Chief Superintendent Stevenson, would you please introduce this report?
Thank you, Chair Herdman and trustees. I'm pleased to present the 2017-18 Monitoring Report on Operational Expectation 8, Communicating and Engaging with the Public. This report is the first monitoring report for the revised OE8. This OE was revised in March 2017 and now combines the previous OE3, Treatment of Owners, with the previous OE9, Communicating with the Public. I would like to highlight that we are compliant with all 14 of the indicators in the new report. Communicating with the public is an essential component of our work, and engaging with our stakeholders is identified as a priority in our 3-year education plan. Operational Expectation 8 speaks to the importance of building confidence in our public through our communication and ongoing dialogue. I would also note that while Communication and Engagement Services is presenting this report, I know that many of our almost 15,000 employees play an important role in communicating and engaging with our communities. I would now like to ask Marla Martin-Esposito, Chief Communications Officer, to provide further details and remarks regarding this report and to respond to any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Chief Superintendent Stevenson. As you indicated, we are compliant with all 14 indicators in this operational expectation report. And this report does highlight not only our work, but the work of our principals, service unit leaders, and many employees across the system. A number of indicators in this report have been added related to community engagement. As a system, we are working hard to reasonably include people in decisions that affect them. We know that we make better decisions when we work together. Implementing the dialogue framework and creating a culture of dialogue continues to be a priority in our 3-year education plan. In 2017-18, our focus was to build capacity of our school and service unit leaders. To support implementation, more than 600 system leaders participated in training sessions, and a toolkit of resources was developed. This toolkit includes more than 30 tip sheets, templates, and engagement samples for leaders. In addition, last year, we led a number of large system engagements, as noted in the report. These and other initiatives provided more than 45 in-person and 11 online engagement opportunities. They offered affected stakeholders the opportunity to have voice in decisions that affected them. Staff were also given numerous opportunities to participate in decisions that affect them. These opportunities included monthly meetings and school visits, as well as system-wide opportunities on topics such as employee engagement and the draft 3-year education plan. This monitoring report also includes new indicators specific to the ongoing support and resources provided to school councils and the handling of concerns and complaints. Through Action Manager, we know that principals are providing opportunities for school councils to provide input on their school development plan and budgets. Principals also indicated that any concerns and complaints were responded to within a specific time frame and that the approved process was used. So thank you. I'll be happy to take any questions now.
Thank you. Trustees, questions on the report? Trustee Bradshaw?
Hi. I guess mine was on page 5-6 or 6 of 14. Of the 4,528 inquiries responded to within 2 business days, were those responses most often a confirmation of receipt, or did it more often include information that would address the inquirer's concerns?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Bradshaw. So we have, we manage a public information line, and in terms of phone calls and emails, we typically average about 400 to 600 a month, and usually they're handled within that call. Now, not necessarily does that sort of end that person's, it kind of gives them guidance on sort of their next step. So say, for example, if they've recently moved to Calgary and they phone up the public information line, the person on the line would sort of direct them to, we'll walk you through where your school is on the Find a School tool, and you'll need to connect with your school. So for the most part, most of those inquiries are sort of managed. If the inquiry is more complicated and requires a couple departments to respond, then we will just acknowledge receipt and manage it over time.
So I really like our new indicators around school councils being involved in school development plans and budgets. I do think it's important for parents to understand their school development plans and their school budgets. And it was fantastic to see 100% in both of those. But I'm just wondering, other than the 5 unique settings mentioned there, do all of our schools have a school council?
Chair Herdman, yes. Although I would say the composition of the school council varies from community to community.
That's great, because there was a time where there wasn't. Trustee Hrdlicka.
So just a follow-up to that, around those 5 schools, how would parents have input to the school development plan?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Hrdlicka. Certainly the unique settings have very intentional ways of involving parents in the educational program of their students. So that would be more in individual conversation, I would say, than anything of a group nature. Although I'm proud to say when I was at Woodson, I did have a school council.
Well, hopefully the principal is not watching right now.
I had one at Hull as well.
Okay then. On page 5-11 and 512, we talk about post-engagement evaluations. And wow, those were way above the, the baseline that we had set. So I'm just wondering how these evaluation forms are handed out. Are they handed out at every single engagement session or just at the final decision point?
Chair Herdman, they're handed out at every in-person session, and I shouldn't say that they're handed out. So depending on sort of how what the setting is, they could just be available at the tables or at sort of an area. We do sort of make sure and try and encourage people to fill it out. We average about a 65% response rate based on 17, 18 in-person sessions.
So on page 5-13, we refer to school-based staff being provided with opportunities to have input into the CBE's overall budget and three-year education plan. I'm just wondering how school-based staff are provided with these opportunities.
Chair Herdman, and excuse my voice. So there's two main mechanisms through which school-based staff can provide input into the budget process. The first is through our budget site, where every employee and member of the public is encouraged to come and leave their comments on our budget. And the second thing would be we do meet with our various associations and union groups annually around budget time to share with them where we believe we're at, some of the decisions that we're proposing to make, and to seek their input into that process.
Chair Herdman, with regard to the three-year education plan, certainly this year we did a survey of all of our principals and asked them to involve their staff in reviewing the three-year education plan. We funneled that information up through area directors, and then as a senior leadership team, we modified the plan based on their feedback.
Will that be a standard practice going forward?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Trustees, any further questions on this report? So we now come to the point where trustees are asked to identify their intentions to bring forward any motions related to compliance with this operational expectation. Any trustee who wishes to bring forward a motion regarding exceptions to finding the evidence to be compliant or a motion of commendation for exceptional performance in a particular area should provide the corporate secretary and all trustees with the proposed motions by the end of day tomorrow, Wednesday, December 5th, 2018. If there are no exceptions or commendations, then this item will be placed on the consent agenda for the January 8th, 2019 board meeting with the motion that the Board of Trustees approves that the Chief Superintendent is in compliance with the provisions of OE8, communicating and engaging with the public. So that now brings us to the consent agenda of our meeting. All items will be deemed to be approved with the agenda, with the exception of the 2018-19 school enrollment report that was removed from the consent agenda, which we will now address. So Chief Superintendent Stevenson, would you please introduce the report?
Chair Herdman, to trustees, I think the report speaks for itself. It's a report that we bring every year, and we are happy to answer any questions that trustees have.
Thank you. Trustees, questions on the report? Trustee Davis?
Can you just remind me for high schools how capacity is calculated in terms of students per classroom? Because we use 25 students in the K-9, I believe. Is it the same for high school? And if you don't know the answer, I didn't send that in advance, but it just occurred to me as I was sitting here.
Chair Herdman, to Trustee Davis, I'll invite Director Carrie Edwards to respond.
Chair Herdman through to Trustee Davis. So there's two distinctions I'll just make. One is when we look at the capacity that the province assigns to a classroom, when we're building a new building or existing facilities for that matter, a classroom would be considered 25 students per class, except for our CTS or CTF spaces where they count 20 students per class. That's different than a class size initiative where you would have a different set of criteria applied to that.
Trustee Davis?
So we have a number of high schools in particular that are over capacity, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the high school accommodation, and if you could just start with what the process is we're undertaking and where we're at in that process.
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis. So we started the process in spring of 2017. It got put on hold because of other projects taking a priority, but the work has started again this fall. We've struck a planning team. We've hired an educational lead, a retired principal, to help with the work. We've held 2 meetings with high school principals to discuss the process at a high level, sort of why it needs to happen, next steps, their role, timelines at a high level. We held a similar meeting with middle junior high principals to walk them through that process. And we have 2 sessions planned with elementary school principals on a voluntary basis for them to learn about this process. We have a workshop scheduled with high school principals later in December to go over the scope of the decision making. So for those of you who have been around through some of our large system engagements, you know how important that engagement roadmap is, and really clarifying what's in and out of scope in the decision making for what our stakeholders will have influence in. And in some cases, there'll be parts of the decision that we need to make internally. So all that work is happening, and our goal is to bring that scope document to the principal group later in December for their review before it comes back to SUP's team. What we've said to the principals is that we would like to have a decision made by October 2021 for a long-term strategy with implementation to follow the following year, because we do know that high schools do actually start more than a year in advance, working through what their courses are, having open houses sort of the fall before the following school year. So it's really important to make the decision with lots of lead time so that parents and students are part of it. It will be our largest engagement, and it impacts almost every student and school in the system. Now, having said all that, if there are schools that are facing enrollment pressures, whether they're over capacity or under, then they know to reach out to their area director, and we'll work with them and planning to deal with their more immediate issues than the engagement will take.
Just a follow-up question on that. You said that the engagement roadmap will be coming back to superintendent's team in January. When do we expect to be able to release that publicly so that the public knows the timelines and what the engagement will look like?
Chair Herdman, just to clarify, it's the scope document coming back in January. We haven't had a chance to fully flesh out the whole roadmap per se, because the team that's working on the enrollment report and high school engagement is also the same team that's just trying to finalize the decisions on French immersion and a number of the other student accommodation sort of planning. So we don't have a specific date when it will come to superintendent's team. We'll start that work in earnest in January, and then hope to have the engagement roadmap out by spring, and we'll definitely come back to you folks and let you know when we can start to communicate that out to the public.
Trustee Adams?
Sorry, just kind of following up with that, just suddenly occurred to me as well. With the potential of a new high school in the north, how does that impact the engagement itself, even though it would be quite a few number of years down the road if it gets approved? How does that affect your engagement?
Chair Herdman, to Trustee Adams, those families will definitely be invited to participate. They may be at a middle junior high school right now, or even at an elementary school, and so depending on where that school is in the planning or building stage, we'll definitely sort of take that into consideration.
Trustee Davis?
So just in terms of how we do our enrollment projections, I know we do project out, we have a 10-year system plan, but can you tell me, sitting here today, how far out have we projected enrollment for high schools based upon what we know and the schools we've opened?
So Chair Herdman, to Trustee Davis, I'll invite Manager Anne Tremblay to respond to that question.
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis. So I would say we do
project enrollment in a lot of different ways. So at a very high level, we're just in the process right now through our annual cycle of doing our next system projection, which we will be in our capital plan, and that goes out 5 years, and then that's the same projection that will be in the 10-year strategy when it comes forward in the spring that will push that out 10 years. And that's based on divisions and grades, that kind of thing. It's not actually broken down into an individual school level. So when we work on any projects with individual schools, that's when we would do 5-10-year projections. We can really project for any length of time, I would say. The 5 to 10 years out is a little more of a, you have a wider net with the projection. It's more accurate within the 5-year time frame because of the kind of data we have access to over 5 years. So as we work through our process with high school engagement, a piece of that will be having some very detailed information, I'm sure, about the current enrollment, past enrollment, programs, future projections for all the different high schools.
Trustee Davis?
So just to help me understand, so I look at a school like Ernest Manning that's currently sitting at 117% capacity, and in an area where we've opened 3 K-9 schools, and the Catholic Board has opened 1 as well. So would Ernest Manning, as an example, have enrollment projections out for the next 5 years? Have we done that projection to see where that school would be at?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis. So I would say yes, internally we have that kind of work. That forms part of what we work with our area directors on as we prepare our annual 3-year system student accommodation plan. And I believe Ernest Manning has actually was on that plan and has now sort of been rolled into the more global high school engagement process, but we had identified that as enrollment increasing at that school, definitely. So I think Superintendent Martin Esposito pointed out that we are still working through how some of that will work in light of our large high school engagement, but we also do know that there are certain situations that may require us to come up with some solutions before we get all the way through the end of that engagement.
Trustee Davis? I'm sorry. Was that a follow-up question? Because Trustee Hrdlicka did have her hand up. Trustee Hrdlicka?
So on page, starting I think 8-27, 8-28, we're outlining the variety of programs that we have in the CBE for our complex learners. And it's, to me, when you look at the programs that we have for kids who have autism, they're somewhere on the scale, students with mental health issues, developmental delays, refugees. As we remember the Chief's words earlier today around we welcome every child in public education. I really value this list because it really shows the diversity and the complexity of our kids. It also speaks to the issue around inclusive education and at the different schools, how we have these students integrated as part of our school communities. And we know that that is a great advantage to all students and all staff. I guess my question is, when we're making those kind of decisions around having those programs in the different schools, can you just throw, what are some of the things that we would consider when we're bringing those programs into those schools?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Hrdlicka, I'll begin, and Superintendent Smith will add to this. So certainly the location of those students becomes really critical, where space is available. There's conversation certainly with the administration about expertise in the building, willing to make that truly an inclusive environment, supporting our staff and receiving parents in that school community, involving them and informing them about the needs of students coming. But primarily, we're looking at reducing travel distance for some of our students, coupled with the needs and the expertise of the staff. Correction, needs of students, expertise of staff.
You know, as we learn more about personalized learning and we focus more on understanding who that child is and what their strengths are and abilities are, I'm just wondering if we're seeing an increase in the number of these specialized classes for students as we learn more about our students.
Chair Herdman to Trustee Herdlicka. What I would begin with is certainly in the Guide to Special Education, based from the province of Alberta, there is a range and an expectation of an array of services available to students, starting from full inclusion to our unique settings. So I would say we have students in a variety of learning environments that supports them and their learning needs. And certainly those conversations occur with parents about that. We have increased in terms of a system, in terms of our general population. So one would also anticipate an increase in some specialized classrooms and additional classrooms in specialized settings.
Trustee Davis?
So just going back to Ernest Manning, it's and I probably know it the best. We have 3 schools over 110% capacity. So when I look at a school like Ernest Manning, and because I know those feeder schools so well, you know, and I look at our timelines, which is 4 years out, I'm really challenged to see how what that school is going to experience over the next couple of years in the absence of being able to make some decisions. And so if we don't, the concern is if we don't mitigate the enrollment growth there, we're going to end up with, the only thing we can do is high class, is increase the class size to accommodate that. So as it relates to those schools that are over 110%, in the short term, are we looking at anything else in terms of the programming that we're offering there? Or how are we going to look at those schools and ensure that they're not going to suffer from high class sizes?
So Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis, I'll begin and others might want to add. We have an extremely well understood process to look at accommodation issues within our system, whether that's an elementary school or a middle school or a junior high or a high school. And we have many, many options available to us. And I'll give you a couple of options that are available completely unrelated to the school you've identified, and I don't want to have that misunderstood. So we have gone into communities and worked with communities and adjusted the different grade levels that are at a particular school, and change grade levels in those schools that are within a reasonable distance so that we move students that way and reduce the pressure within an environment. We have overflow schools assigned, so where you are designated to school A, but if in fact that school becomes too full, we designate school B for those students to go to. That's a particular option that we can use. We have options where we redesignate communities to a different school to relieve the pressure within a particular school. So those are 3 options, and there are other options. We work in very close coordination with area directors, with school principals, and ultimately with communities when we are forced into those situations where those decisions have to be made. So we are well aware of the circumstances out there, and as Chief of Communications Officer Esposito mentioned, there are circumstances that can't wait and that we are already engaged in discussions, particularly at well, I won't say particularly, but certainly in some of those cases, these are high schools that we're talking about. So we aren't waiting for the bigger engagement, and as pointed out, that engagement literally involves every high school, every middle school, every elementary school, every student, every community in our city, and it is a massive undertaking. But we know that the time it will take does not then relieve us of the responsibility to deal with emergent issues. So I hope that helps in the answer.
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis. Maybe I would only add to that obviously between now and the conclusion of the high school engagement, any measures that we'd be implementing, we'd want to be very careful about it impacting the larger engagement. And so we would be looking at things that can be done in a more interim fashion until such time as we have a more permanent and holistic solution for that school. So for example, overflowing might be easier than changing community boundaries, for example.
When we're calculating our weighted enrollment, does this include international students who may be attending the school?
Chair Herdman, yes and no. So there are, within our Power School system, our former SURS system, there are various different categories of international students, and it depends what they're here for and how long they're here for. So yes, in some cases there are certain codes that are included and there are other codes that are not. But if they are resident students of the CBE who will be here for the full year as opposed to a visiting student, then they are included in our enrollment that we use to calculate utilization.
Chair Herdman, to trustees, I would point out that for the one category, we absolutely have the ability to limit enrollment in any particular school based on the needs of that particular school.
Trustee Davis?
So I appreciate the answers, and I guess we'll be looking for some additional information on some of our pressure points as we move forward. Just going back to the comment about scope and establishing scope, I know that in the last year or two, the provincial government moved to limit the number of CEU credits that high schools could obtain in any given year. And while I understand we're not funded under that model, I'm just wondering, as it relates to scope for the high school, are we looking at restricting the number of credits that students can take as part of completing their high school, if that's part of the scope?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis, we're still working on the scope. And I would say at this point in time, we haven't had that conversation. It wouldn't preclude us from having it into the future, however.
Trustees, any further questions on the enrollment report? Trustee Davis?
So just looking at some of the alternative programs that we do offer, and I take a look at a school like Langevin, for example, which is a science-based program, always had a lot of people who want to attend it, and as a result, we opened up some additional science programs. It's my understanding from the discussion we had last year that we actually track our waiting lists, and so I'm wondering if we have some numbers around people who are looking to get into science programs within the system.
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis. Yes, we do track that information. I don't have all of that information specifically to science with me today, but it's certainly something that I can provide to the board if that's your wish.
Chair Herdman through to Trustee Davis, what I would also note is as part of the lottery process, changes came in a few years ago. It's called a callback list now, and that list is dissolved every September 30th, and we start fresh every year. So we don't keep an ongoing list of students waiting to be called back from year to year.
Trustee Hrdlicka? I'm sorry. Trustee Hare has been waiting. Okay. Trustee Hrdlicka?
So we have many alternative programs, different programs within our system that we really value in our system. Beyond science, are there other kids on wait lists in other programs throughout the city?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Herdlicka, I would say that there are wait lists in some of our alternative programs. I don't have exact numbers for all of those here at this time. Again, if that's information that you would like, we can certainly get it for you.
Sorry, Trustee Hare, I'm not doing a very good job of chairing today.
You're doing a wonderful job. Okay, so I think I have a question here, but I'm looking at 3.7, and the paragraph that goes, excuse me, this relatively higher pace of growth is because the city of Calgary is expected to remain a more attractive destination for migrants relative to other Alberta jurisdictions. Calgary remains the commercial and economic center of southern Alberta. I'm going to stop there, okay? I think we're all aware of the challenges facing Alberta at this point in time. I am still quite confident that our future is rosy, and I think we have to make some adjustments. But as this paragraph indicates, we are the commercial and economic center of southern Alberta, and I would also suggest we are the education center of southern Alberta. And I would refer to our own Calgary Public School District, which, as the alternative programs, which were mentioned by Superintendent Stevenson earlier, do attract students, not only students with special needs, but also other students who come here to perhaps play hockey or other things like that, to set themselves up for further progress in the world in which we live. And so I think, once again, this movement to alternative programs has enhanced that attractability throughout the province and perhaps elsewhere, and I think it's something to look forward to. But I think we'll feel very proud about the educational opportunities provided in our city, and certainly at the K through 12 level too. So I just simply wanted to mention it, and I guess my question is everybody else proud too?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Hare, I'm proud.
The time is open for questions or comments, so you didn't have to add a question on if you did not want to. Trustee Davis.
So just going back to the scope in high school, so one of the things I look at when I look at this enrollment report and compare it to, for example, the science programs that we offer, I actually see that we do not have a K to 9 science program in areas 1, 2, 4, 7. So, as we look, and it's hard to tell, of course, what programs we offer at each high school from this report. It's not, I understand it's not part of it. But can you speak to how we are going to address the programming options that we offer as part of this engagement, or are we, I guess, as we look at balancing out our enrollment, what part is some of those options going to form that analysis?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis, my colleague to my left distracted me and I missed some of your question. If you could just repeat it, and I'm sorry to ask you that.
I'm sorry he threw you under the bus, but that's okay. No, I'm kidding. So in the same way, I know within our system we look to balance out opportunities for learning in different programs across our geography. And so there are some, so when I look at science programs, where actually there's 4 areas we don't offer a science program in. So, but just thinking about the high school engagement and the scope, as we look at all of the levers we have to balance out, are we going to be looking at some of the options that we offer at the different high schools, and are we going to at this stage, and how might that inform this high school engagement, because given the size of it, I assume we don't want to do it again anytime soon.
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis. I'll begin, and others may want to add to that. I think that you're asking an extremely important question as we go forward. I think that you already know and would be aware of examples where we have looked, for example, at alternative programs, and because of the desire of our communities, because of the need, we have expanded them. I think that we are looking now in the Northwest at French immersion, and we recognize that more parents want that opportunity within a reasonable distance from where they live. We have looked at last year the Mandarin program, and not related directly to high school, of course, but looked to whether it was feasible to expand that as well. In terms of our CTS courses at the high school, we're well aware that the cost of equipment and resources and the number of specialized staff it takes, that as a district we could not find a strategy that would have all of the CTS in all of the high schools, and we had to make decisions around which would go where and trying to find that balance, and we certainly looked at the areas at that time around that particular issue. With the science, we have expanded from one to a second site, again based on parent need and desire. So as we go forward and we look to balance out high schools, then it's quite possible that those particular issues will be part of that particular engagement. But again, it wouldn't be part of it simply to gain balance, but rather because we have the interest and desire of our families, we have the resources, we have the staff, we have the space, we have the transportation abilities to expand those programs.
Chair Herdman to Trustee Davis, and my quick working staff have provided some information in regards to the callback lists. And so we see demand within this past school year, with the start of the past school year, in TLC being in the order of about 200, Montessori about 40, and in the science program about 450.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And although I think I know the answer to this question, you mentioned the balancing out with CTS, for example. When we, and I know we have some dual credit courses in that, but are we provided with any additional funding when we want to set up a CTS program, or is it expected to be funded out of the global education budget?
I was enjoying the show, sorry. Chair Herdman through to Trustee Davis. So yeah, we don't get specific additional funding for CTS programming. So I guess there's two parts of that. If we're building a new school, the funding allocation we get for said new school would include whatever programming goes into that. There is some expectation in a high school, obviously, that there'll be some form of CTS programming. On the operating side, it's just the per student funding, and from that, all things must flow.
I know we haven't talked a lot about the dual credit beyond, I think there's some interest in expanding it, but that would also include the dual credit. There's no additional funding for that, right?
Chair Herdman through to Trustee Davis, there was some additional funding provided for dual credit. I think ostensibly the funding was provided to allow students to attend the post-secondary institutions and to pay for their tuition in those institutions, broadly speaking.
Trustee Hrdlicka?
So when we talk about the funding for dual credit, is that from the government? Because I know we have a lot of partnerships with different organizations, post-secondary and so forth. Just wondering when we're talking about the funding and supports, where exactly that's coming from?
Chair Herdman to Trustee Hrdlicka. Our partners do help us out with programming, but at this point in time, the funding either comes from the government or from the Calgary Board.
Chair Herdman to Trustee Hrdlicka. Certainly Education Matters has been significant in burial removal funding, so transportation and facilitating people getting there has been a significant part of those partnerships.
Trustee Davis?
Just on this report, when we talk about modulars, we are not talking about the base building modulars, because that's how we're building schools now, right? With a central hub and then the arms of modulars. So are the modulars we're referring to in addition to what would have been built with our new schools, I guess, if that makes sense?
Chair Herdman through to Trustee Davis, when we talk about modulars, we talk about every modular we have, whether they're attached to the building or not. So a new school, for instance, if it's built with a set of modulars, say 4 or 6, those count as modulars. Every year when we do the modular report, we would be asking for extra modulars on those schools. So yes, to answer your question, those modulars are the current existing, whether they're attached or built with the school, or whether they've been added into the future.
Trustee Adams?
Just looking at 8-33, specifically at James Fowler High School. In 2017, the provincial utilization rate was 47%, and in 2018, we have it at 71%. Is that the addition of Chinook Learning?
Chair Herdman through to Trustee Adams, yes, that would be the addition of Chinook Learning when we're thinking about the students that have been added in at both Beaverbrook and at James Fowler. Those students are now counted into those enrollments in those 2 sites.
Trustee Hrdlicka?
So just looking at the alternative programs like 8-22, I'm just wondering when we're looking at putting, having the idea of an alternative program, or in order to increase capacity in a school or population in a school, when it comes to keeping that regular program, that community-based program, what kind of things are we thinking about? Because there have been schools where when the alternative program comes in, it takes over the school after maybe a couple years because there's high demand for it. And I'm just wondering, from the Calgary Board's position, when it comes to those community programs, we're talking a lot about alternatives here, but what do we do in order to work to keep those programs, those community programs in those schools?
Chair, sorry, I've just lost it. Thank you. Chair Herdman through to Trustee Hrdlicka. So when we look at schools with declining enrollment, one possible way of using the space that exists in those schools is by adding an alternative program. It's important to clarify that different alternative programs have different entry points. So for instance, adding a science or a TLC program would mean that students who might be in the regular program may cross the hall, for instance, and join into one of those classes. Whereas if we added an alternative language program, there are certain entry points for that at either kindergarten or grade 1. So when we're working with the schools and an alternative program may be one of the possible options for the use of space, we're very clear in our communication and our engagement work, like we did in 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7, around what the possibilities are, and continuing to monitor that enrollment as part of the SSAP, but being very cognizant that if students are able to move at different grade levels, people make that choice for their families based on what is available to them in that particular school.
Trustees, any further questions on the enrollment report? The board has 2 land and 1 labor matters to deal with in camera following the public portion of this meeting. And that brings us to the conclusion of this portion of the agenda. I'd like to thank all of you who joined us for the meeting. Our next public board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, January 8th, 2019. As this is our last public board meeting until the new year, I'd like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.